everyone. Welcome to another episode of Raising the Bar. And today I'm delighted to have someone that I invited on a few years ago. And we had a really great chat. And since then, there's been even more of a clown show going on in the world that we can talk about. David, how's things going where you are?
John, so good to see you again, man. So I live in British Columbia, Canada, and I don't know if anybody's seen the news, but right now Canada is literally on fire.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of craziness going on here, as usual. Our economy is also on fire. Our politics is on fire. Media is on fire. Pretty much everything's on fire right now. So we're just sort of sitting back and, well, not hopefully sitting back too much. We're all trying to get active in our own way. And as for me, I've been pretty busy. I've been running my podcasts, just finally reopened my martial arts studio with my wife after it was closed at the beginning of 2020 due to the pandemic. So we are finally back in business. So I got a lot going on, but I'm
That's
so happy to see you, man. How
Yeah,
are
good to
you?
see
How's
you.
things going in the
No,
UK?
I'm good actually. I'm good, and I've this the podcast only really started for me because of the pandemic. It was something to do indoors, basically. And
Right.
since then, it's sort of grown a little bit, and I've been moving studios, and yeah, actually, funny enough, TikTok's been really good to me. It's one of the few platforms that actually done me a favor, and it kind of really blew up on there.
I remember that they have really good algorithms. So I'm glad
Mm.
your message is getting out, and more people than ever are starving for this kind of information. So
Yeah. Well, you know what's
we are
funny,
in good
Dave?
times in
You
that
know
way.
what's funny? It's just what the hell is going on where you turn on the TV and you just know it's fake news and you go on TikTok for your information these days. I mean, there's a real topsy-turvy inversion going on there, isn't there?
Yeah, but it's good, right? Because and we have more platforms like Twitter, which is where I usually hang out.
Mm.
Twitter, Telegram, those places,
Yeah,
they've been
Telegram.
around.
Yeah.
They have their problems, but they all do. And I guess people are looking for information they can trust. And they're having harder and harder time trusting the demonstrably grotesque
Yeah.
excuse for journalism that we call the mainstream media, which is a dinosaur that's dying out. And their ratings are down. The only reason they're in existence is because they're all being funded.
Mm.
And they're being funded to put out particular propaganda messages, either corporate or government, doesn't matter. It's a mix now. I think it's just all the same thing these days. The oligarchy, the
Mm.
technocracy, they put out their message and they shadow ban and censor and sideline journalists or independent researchers or people like ourselves, podcasters that are trying to look at things from different angles and put the whole story out. They don't like that. So people are sensing it and they're going to more shows like yours, like mine.
Mm.
My channels are blowing up these days also. And it's not just because of me. I mean, I think it's because, again, we have some social media that is backing away from this censorship, which is allowing our message to get out. And also, people, we just went through 3 years where pretty much all the conspiracy theories are being proven true. And people are like, okay, can't really trust that media. I'm going to have to research for myself. So I think that's what you're experiencing and good for
Yeah.
you, man. Congrats.
Yeah, no, it's good. Thanks, you too. And I think that the old way of doing things was trying to play their game within their supermarket. And I think the way
Mm.
that people are going now as journalists is to kind of build your own home, build your own little platform for people to come and see your stuff and then let them spread it rather than trying to do everything in their little container where they've got like complete control over it. And I think
Yeah.
I've been having that battle for a long time with YouTube and things like that. And I think, do you know what? Just get a little private membership going. If people want to see it, they'll pay for it, and that's how it kind of that's how you get your devoted followers, I think. And so that's, I think, and also good for everyone to spread the message to disseminate the truth because if you're in one little contained and surveilled and controlled little box, then you don't really have much hope. But if we all break off and hybrid off, we all splinter out, then actually we can actually create more effect, I think, that way. There's potential. So I definitely have a lot of hope for where the future's going. I don't know if you saw recently there was a Tate, Andrew Tate versus BBC interview. Now you can think
Oh,
what
I
you
haven't
want
seen
about the
it. I got to
guy.
check it out.
I
Yeah.
mean, I'll ask your opinion on him in a minute, but I thought what was really interesting. Personally, I can see a lot of value in him. I quite like him. What he represents to me is the new school. The kind of the rebel against the state. He's the kind of the neo, shall we say, and he's going up against the BBC. And in this interview, he's having talking with this girl, and she's such a typical crusty old dinosaur with like ideologically possessed and with animus possessed almost. And it's almost archetypal. You've got the kind of the neo that represents the new school, the kind of the raw masculine, that kind of raw unfeathered energy, masculine energy, are going against this kind of going up against the machine, the Borg, you know. And
Right.
in this interview, it's like it's archetypal, and you can see even just in the conversation they're having, it's almost like this is having a ripple effect, kind of as, above, so below. You know, it's almost like a macrocosm of the interview is the microcosm, and you can feel like this is happening on a macrocosmic level. You know, so there's it's very interesting that interview, and he absolutely, you know, he kind of mopped the floor with her really, and just basically just held a mirror up to Medusa, and she glitched a lot like the Kathy Newman Jordan Peterson interview. I don't know if you saw that one,
Oh,
but
I remember that one. Yeah.
it was a lot like that, and it almost feels as though we're at that point now where people are. I mean, obviously, the boomer generation are still worshipping the BBC and all that farmer-controlled corporate media, but there is this new way. You know, the young uns now that are coming through. We're not watching TV. We're not buying into the news. We know it's bullshit. You know, and I do think there's this new wave, and I don't know what do you think, David? Do you think they're going to have to diversify their means of disseminating information, or do you think they're going to try and keep that keep the old machine going as long as possible till the wheels come off?
Well, that's a really good question. I'm curious to see what they're going to do. But
Mm,
as to that interview, you're getting me excited, man. I'm gonna have to go check it out. I think I saw maybe that's the clip I
mm,
saw. I saw a clip going around of
yeah,
Tate, and of course, there's been all the drama with him. And I like how you brought up the archetypal
yeah,
aspect because I mean, this is the problem. People have trouble seeing that and understanding that um, that we're not just talking about the person. We're not just talking about their personal life and who you think they are and whether you think they're a shill or you don't like their personality or whatever. Everybody's got their thing. But think of these big personalities that have come into the picture that have clearly ruffled the feathers of the powers that shouldn't be. And, you know, these big masculine personalities. And you're seeing them in both men and women now, like in an interesting way, where it's just this act of rebellion. Maybe it's the spirit of rebellion. Maybe it's the spirit of freedom. Maybe it's a quest for the truth. People have been lied to. They're seeing that it's fake. They're sick of living fake lives. I think that's why people are all running back to religion and spirituality and trying to look outside the box right now. It's something in the air. And I think what that thing is that we just went through and we're still going through a lot of traumatic and massive historical events. It's to the point, John, I don't know if you feel like this, but I'm trying to figure out how do I condense all the things that just happened in like 2 days into a show? Like I just can't even do it anymore. It used to be like, oh, finally, there's something I can talk about that
yeah,
references what I'm
yeah,
researching. But
mm,
now it's like, oh my God, like I've got a pile of stuff I can't even get to. That's how it's
mm,
this is the apocalypse, man. And I mean that in the sense of the way it was originally meant,
yeah,
which is the revealing. This is the great revealing. The cover is being lifted
mm,
slowly but surely, drip, drip, drip. People are getting information on so many subjects that were just stuff we maybe looked at.
mm,
Some of us fringe people, all small fringe minority, who have turned out to have quite acceptable views after all, I must say. Um,
yeah,
we have been taking out the most powerful propaganda machine ever in human history by just using memes, having some great video clips, having
humor,
good
yeah,
shows,
good
being
banter,
entertaining. Yeah. And just, you know what it is? This is why
mm,
people love podcasts. They like
yeah,
this. I love how you know what? Just so
mm,
people know, John came on. He's like, dude, we're just rolling today. We're not planning anything. We're just rolling.
yeah,
I'm like, I
yeah,
love that. We're just
yeah,
here talking. Two men
yeah,
looking at what's going on from our neck of the woods. We both care about the truth and freedom. Everybody listening, hopefully you do too.
mm,
We don't all have it. We have our theories, we have our favorite subjects and our favorite ways of looking at things. But in the end, we're all up against a massive empire that is
mm,
seeking dominance and control over all of us, all of our land, all of our resources. They're absorbing all of our countries into a massive machine, like you said, a machine. And there's the representatives from the machine. That's who's these BBC interviewers and all these people are. Sorry to break it to you for those that are catching up.
mm,
They're not who they don't even know. They're just reading scripts. We're not reading scripts. We're having real human conversations, doing our own thinking, our own investigation, our own inquiry, and then we're talking about it. And other people are watching and they're resonating more because they're like, I'm also looking into those things, and I do hear what you're saying, and I want to learn more. So, dude, they can't compete with us if they could throw trillions of dollars, and they are. Trust me, they're throwing every
yeah.
penny they got. They're calling up George Soros. They're calling up the
Yeah, we need a
World
little bit
Bank
more.
Economic Forum. They're like, yo, Give us some cash. We're dying. CBC News needs more
Mm,
money from the government again because everybody in Canada hates them, except for the new small fringe minority. So it's a crazy time to be alive, brother. And I know it's
mm.
stressful and chaotic and sometimes scary, but it's also an adventure. And that's what I think this spirit you're referring to, these archetypes, they're appealing to that in us. They're calling men, they're calling women too, but specifically the men, saying, you have an adventure, you have a battle in front of you, you have a mission to accomplish, you have something to do instead of sitting around
Mm.
twiddling your thumbs and distracting yourself. So I'm
Yeah, I
just happy
love
to be
that.
part of it.
I love that. Yeah, and just going back to that, to the energies within Tate, let's say, I think there's been a vacuum created where there's been a lack of that really raw, potent masculine energy. And I think Jordan Peterson came in and that sort of satisfied a lot of people, a lot of men, because that was what was missing. We could feel that. I think there's a certain felt experience, and we feel like there's a lack of that societally. He came along, and everyone sort of gravitated towards him. And I think it's almost like an oscillation. So when you get a push in one direction, a character will pop up that will kind of bring it back into
Mm,
balance. And
mm,
that's because we feel like there's a missing element, there's a missing ingredient that maybe someone like Tate represents. Even though he's very abrasive and he's sort of very materialistic, there's a truth to what he says, and there's a sort of a power behind it. And I think that's why you get people like him pop up, and a lot of people gravitate towards him. And so in that interview, I could feel as though it wasn't just BBC versus Tate, it wasn't just woman versus man. It was almost like the collective, the kind of the that hive mind against that individual thought, that kind of outlier, that the one that's able to go outside the box. That was what was really happening in that interview, if
mm,
you know what I mean. And that's why I loved it.
right.
It was like a little kind of
Capsuled it.
little, yeah, encapsulated in that. But I wonder it's interesting what you say about the 3 year, like everything seems to be happening in the last 3 or 4 years. It's almost as if you've taken 100 years, you've squished it down into like a small period of time. And you said about the apocalypse, because it's almost like in the original etymology that it means the beginning of something, doesn't it? A lot of people think it means the end of something, but
Mm.
in the way that you're using that word, would you say that we are at the end of an epoch and we're about to, shed the skin of something and move into something else? And this is almost like that. When a zombie or a monster's about to die in a horror movie, they die and then they come up again for that last hurrah. A little bit
Yeah.
like that, where they or like a cornered rat. They know they're going to die, and there's that last frantic attack. Do you not feel as though it just feels to me like they're throwing everything in the kitchen sink because this is their last? See if I can use a few more metaphors. All their poker chips in at once because they feel as though this could be the end and changing of something. So better get that lid on. Better get that great reset and get everyone chipped and surveilled on a digital currency. Are you seeing it the same sort of way or
Yeah, I mean, in many respects, I've tried to look at it from multiple ways. I try to
yeah,
listen to everybody and say, okay, there's I guess the sort of more black pilled people,
yeah,
who think, no, these guys have it totally cinched. They've got us in checkmate. We're just, puppets on strings and it's hopeless and it's all in it.
yeah,
I don't go in that place at all because I've studied history and I've had my own history, my own life and observation to see that, there is still good in the world. There is, in any type, there's good in the world, there's hope in the world. That comes from Tolkien, like that's where I come from. And I go, all right, I look at this instead of a start and end date to everything. I look at it as a cycle on the big picture. And this unveiling or the shedding of a skin, this is what the apocalypse for me is it's not the end. It's the end is the beginning and the beginning is the end because it's a cycle, right? So what this is an end of an age and the beginning of a new age. And there's like little micro ages in between. And it's all based on where we are at as resonating conscious creatures on this planet. And so I think they're just trying to hijack a momentous occasion of there's a momentous energetic something that they believe in that's happening that they think we have these are the windows of opportunity for us to get our agenda in place, and these are the challenges we're facing, and they're taking chances. And I think it got to a point where it got a little bit sloppy. And this is because I think the old guard that used to run a lot of these massive think tanks, organizations, and others we can get into, they've died off. They've been dying off. And the newer generations are really just a bunch of spoiled brats that don't have the same level of intellect, cunning, forethought. They're just, imagine like a psychopathic teenager that has trillions of dollars and all the power, money, and influence in the world, and access to all the gears in the machine to mass propagate information to the public mind. That's what we're dealing with, is a level of hubris. And there's almost like I get this feeling intuitively that there's almost like a childlike dynamic at play here in the minds of these people. Like, I look at, obviously I live in Canada, so I have Trudeau as an example, so maybe that's why. But I think that we're in a time where all this is coming up on the big stage, because everything's coming up internally for a lot of people as well. Like, there's a relationship between those things. So as we all went through these lockdowns and we saw our world change, and they brought in the new normal, and it hasn't gone away at all. We haven't gone back to any level of normal. Um, People are reacting to that, and they're seeking relief from that, because it's literally like torture. We've been in psychological abusive relationship with our governments, with the powers that be for a long time. And people have had enough of it, and they've had enough of the craziness of it. And the craziness of it, I think, is done on purpose, for one thing, because you keep the populace confused about what's really going on, and then they're more susceptible to hypnosis and programming. But on the other sense, I honestly think a lot of these events are literally happening at the rate that they're happening because people are waking up, because more minds are coming to the fight, because we got more whistleblowers coming out. We got more data dropping, hard facts that are undeniable and indisputable, to the point where the mainstream media is now forced to cover it, or otherwise they're literally going to have zero ratings, because people like us are covering it. And this is where people want to go. I mean, look at Tucker Carlson, for example, another archetype in the American mind, right? Just like Trump, just like Bolsonaro, just like some of these characters. They're archetypes in a way. And people get focused on the Joneses with these people. And I'm going, no, 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 you're not seeing the greater time that we're in, we're calling this all into being in a way, I think. And so there's always a reaction when, like, our system has become so polluted and so cancerous that we're starting to see the white blood cells emerge to raise the immunity. And that's what I believe this process of waking up is. And so that is what is causing them to go, all right, let's grab more. Let's throw all the weapons, all the things. Let's go with aliens. Let's go with everything. Let's find the whole kit and caboodle to keep people mesmerized.
Yeah.
Even though I think there's truth to a lot of these things, but they just want to manage it. They know that they can't hold it back anymore. They know we've got phones in our cameras in our pockets. We're recording everything. We're documenting everything. And so I think they're reacting to that. And I think that they're also being exposed by some of their own, which has really, this is where the whistleblowers come in. And I think that has really just begun. And we're going to see a cascade of more whistleblowers coming up, I'd say, within the next 3 to 6 months.
Wow, that's really interesting. Actually, it's funny, earlier you mentioned there's a great reveal. I've got a book coming out called The Great Reveal.
No, no way.
That's what it's called. Yeah, and it's based on an interview series I did with a whistleblower who basically unraveled or unveiled a paedophile network that went right to government level and to the royals.
Wow.
And I've got to leave it. I've got to leave it on that, because obviously I've got to be a little bit careful. But you can use your
Yep.
imagination. I'm going to say royals, important royals. So this book's going to come out, and that's my pushback against, and that's my equal and opposite pushback against the Great Reset, because there's the cause. This is my effect, you know. But what
Yeah.
you were saying is really interesting, because you were saying because of the truth coming up, they have to sort of, you know, push it down. But for me, it's a little bit of chicken and egg, because I don't know which comes first. Because you could also argue that as they start to implement more of these totalitarian measures, that does have a sharpening effect, and it wakes people up. For instance, 9/11. Look at the effect that had globally on the
Yep.
wake up effect. So in my eyes, they fucked up, because they shouldn't have done that, because it had the effect of bringing more truth seekers out, bringing those white blood cells out. So I think as they start to push down on us, it wakes us up. So I'm wondering which comes first in that dynamic. You know,
I know.
in a way, maybe on a larger cosmic level, that happens simultaneously, and that is just part of the wake up. As we awaken, more of the control measures come in. As the control measures come in, we wake up even faster, and then you get the two, like doing that. I think almost. So you have like almost like a dual reality where you have total totalitarianism, but at the same time you have the whole populace awakening. And I don't know what that looks like, but it's almost like there is some kind of split. There's like a kind of a divide, and there's like you could almost say like an two alternative realities forming. I don't know
Mm.
whether they coexist, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just.
Oh no, you're onto something. And I
I'm
mean,
on
we
to
could
say
argue this is
it's amusing. It's amusing. I haven't
yes.
worked out yet.
No, you're onto something because I guess we've heard predictions of the fact that there could be a splitting into two Earths and all these things, but
Mm,
obviously not physically, right?
yeah,
This is all
definitely.
psychological. This is all the realm of the mind, right? This is the archetypes. So in the archetypal world, in the meta world, there is a splitting because we have people that seem to be going further and further into cognitive dissonance, the refusal to face reality, the refusal to face themselves, which means they will be incapable of seeing evil, corruption, and tyranny in the world, right? Because I think you have to, in order to be able to be aware of this level of corruption and tyranny, like we were talking about with the
Mm,
child predators and all this kind of stuff. And there's a lot of info coming out about that we can get to, but that kind of subject is so dark, right? Or even the idea that some of these events were either planned and actually executed to achieve a result, or at the very least, taken advantage of, like these pandemics and all these things, these fires, everything else. Either way, the average person out there, if they aren't self-aware to that level, if they weren't awakened just as a being, whether there was a new world order, great reset happening or not, if they weren't starting to awaken there, at least on that level, they are blind to
yeah.
the bigger reality. Because here's the thing, I've noticed it, you've probably noticed it, when you try to bring literally pallets of evidence to people about any subject,
Yeah.
okay, and we've got it, trust me, you should see my library and my notes, I'm sure yours are the same. You bring all that information, and no matter what, it's like their head is encased in cement, and you can't get through. And the reason is because it's an inner resistance to facing reality. It's too real, it's too raw, they're not ready for it. But here's the thing, these guys have pushed the foot on the gas pedal, and now look at how everything is just going batshit crazy in every department. And it's as if it's meant to, on maybe a bigger level, reach the hearts and minds of every human being to give the opportunity to wake up in a way like we've never had before. So I see these
Mm,
Sith Dark Lords as being sort of a gift to us, in a way that
yes.
will awaken us to what's been going on for sure. But in that process, only then would we be able to develop the idea, because you need to start with an idea of what a truly free and good and healthy world looks like, run by moral people, run by
Mm,
good people that care about this planet, care about the humans and the life on it, and aren't these particular psychopaths. What would that world look like? So yeah, it's a
yeah.
crazy time, and I think it is splitting, but in other ways we're coming together. I'm coming together with people, and,
Mm,
and agreeing on things that previously I thought, oh, I'll never agree on anything with these people, like they're just too wrapped up in the mainstream media. But now they're the ones telling me, as if I didn't know,
oh, really?
did you know that there's only like 5 corporations that own them? I'm like,
Mm.
welcome.
Well, yeah.
Welcome, come on over.
Yeah, there's hope for some of them. There's definitely hope for some. I call them the
Let's hope it
moderates,
continues.
the ones that are open-minded but aren't necessarily on the pulse of what's going on, but they're still,
Right.
willing to look at things after that reaches a certain point of critical mass. I think within the collective consciousness, they're willing to look at it. I think so. There's
Mm.
definitely those people, but yeah, it's interesting. I think 2020 was that point where people that was 2020 vision. That was the year where that moment started, where all the all the darkness came up to the surface like a pus. And
Mm.
those that were very tuned, spirit had that spiritual discernment, could see what was going on. And going back to that thing I said about the divide, I think you nailed it there. It's about you could be walking with your friends and family, but you could be in two totally different realities. And we
Right.
saw that. One would be walking down the street with a mask on, treble jabbed, seeing fear and viruses everywhere in the air. And then we would be walking down saying, no mask, free, open, with a sense of communion and love and togetherness and no fear. And that is the divide, fear and love. I mean, it doesn't get
100%.
more polarizing than that. And I think that was definitely crystallized and came to the surface in 2020. Ironically, the 2020 vision. And I don't know where it's going to go in the next few years, but it's definitely. I mean, if the last 3 or 4 years, it's just people are going to look back on this time and really, there'll be degrees, whole degrees done on this subject when what's been going on in the last few years. It's just, yeah, it's
I
absolutely
know.
crazy what's been going on. But David, can I just ask you, mate? Because I know you mentioned about the forest fire. I know we've been talking in sort of big terms, but
Mm.
I didn't want to jump over that. What has been going on there? Because I know, obviously, we just know that there's forest fires going on in Canada, and it's, you know, going to America. But um, yeah, what do you think is the truth behind all that? Because obviously they're trying to, they're using that as a guise to legitimize climate change and bring in all these different types of measures. And what is Trudeau's response at the moment to all this?
This is a good story, man. Okay. So apparently, climate change works different in Canada than, say, the 10 hottest countries on planet Earth, where only here, about a month and a half early, we suddenly have like the whole country erupt in flames. Like it's right now, Quebec is
Mm,
basically in flames. There's evacuations going on. My brother lives in Nova Scotia, which is the East Coast. And I actually got to follow up with him because last week there was fires to the point where he was in the zone that was about to be cleared out because like evacuated.
mm,
Other zones were already evacuated. So we're already doing evacuations. That's how bad the fires were there.
mm,
He luckily some rain came when last time I talked to him and he's like, okay, I think we're good. And I haven't heard anything. So I'm sure they're fine, but I know the fires have started. There's fires in Alberta, which is the province next to me. Where I am, I'm kind of lucky because I'm on the island in British Columbia and we don't see any smoke. We don't see anything here because we're looking at Washington State, that's the view I have across the water
mm,
here. And but in the mainland, Vancouver, those areas, just outside, there's fires going on. There's fires in man, it's like I'm trying to look at the map
mm,
and they're just everywhere. And then here's this thing. Somebody went in, he's like a meteorologist. He went in and made a video. You'll probably see it on Twitter where he's showing like fast forward and rewind of the actual satellite imagery or the videos that they had of the
mm,
plumes of smoke coming out from Quebec as to locating where the fires were, right? Well, doesn't it show every single one of them disconnected from each other in different areas, all starting at the exact same moment? They all start at the exact same moment. It's like, what, like you just lit a match and then like all of those areas just started at the exact same moment. It doesn't make sense. And then all these provinces are up in flames right now. I think it's only like Manitoba and Saskatchewan that aren't.
mm,
And I think it's just because they have so much flat land there. The wind is passing through very easily. But either way, here's the story. They're telling us, and all the media is telling us, that literally this is because of climate change. Get this. Our climate czar, I can't even pronounce his name. He's from Quebec. He's a former radical climate activist that is now in charge of, I guess, the climate department of the government. And he's tabling a bill that is more strict carbon taxes and surveillance of like more government power regarding we need to stop climate change. So basically, he's just drilling in the next few steps of the sustainable development goals from the United Nations, right? Because that's where it all comes from. So, a coincidence that when he's trying to table that bill that's going to drastically increase an already monolithically powerful liberal government after the powers they gained from the pandemic and never got out of there unscathed, they are now going to increase their power in all these other areas that it's going to start to look like what happened in the Netherlands. A lot of people are concerned about with these farmers because all this stuff goes down into the agriculture. Everything, the price of everything goes up, the taxes, everything's up. And so that's happening. And then here's the clincher for me to all the people who are like, well, it is, fires can start. Okay, yeah, fires can start. Here's the thing. Mismanagement of forests, absolutely. The clear cutting of forests, which leaves the dry residue that easily catches up like a tinderbox. So there's those discussions. But also who started all of these? Because now they're arresting. They just arrested another one today. I don't know what the total number is, but over the past week and a half, there have been multiple provinces. RCMP has in multiple provinces in Canada have arrested, and they've even reported on this in
mm.
the news, arsonists
Yeah.
starting fires on purpose. There was one that they arrested 36 people in one province, 36 people purposefully lighting forests on fire. Who does that, John?
Mm.
people that are paid or offered drugs or government agents or something. We've already caught the government in, I believe it's Ontario, that where this happened, where we caught government agents under the surveillance of RCMP, meaning the protection of RCMP, pouring harsh chemicals into rivers and streams that were ending up killing fish and whatnot. And you're like, why the hell are you doing this? Why are you killing? And there's videos of this stuff. So what I think is happening here, we saw this happen in Australia during the Australian fires. I think this was 2019, where they caught activists there. People caught film of them, and then they were even arrested. And then the media went, it's climate change, it's climate change. And then the same thing in the States. I think this was in 2019 or 2020, maybe even a little bit later, where there was some fires that kicked off. They caught arsonists and or whatever, and then the media's like, it's climate change. And now they're doing it here in Canada, where literally all the provinces go aflame and they're still burning, and there's a plume of smoke that is blanketing New York. It looks like the end of the world in New York. It looks like apocalypse over there. And so, it's amazing. So I'm sitting here going, this to me looks like an attack of some kind. It just looks like it. It feels like it. And you can't slight me for suspecting these known liars and criminals in our government who already pushed unscientific policies that killed people, that destroyed our businesses, that harmed our economy to the point where now they have to keep lying to us about just how bad our debt is every day. And I'm going to trust them when it comes to the fact that they want to push climate change and all these policies that come from the top guys. Just conveniently, Canada just goes up in flames so they can make that argument. And then they're catching arsonists all over the country. And these fires start in Quebec all the same time. I'm sorry. Like, call me what you want. I think people are doing this on purpose.
You bloody tinfoil hat, where are you? You and your logic.
Hey, at least it isn't one of those masks. That's all I care.
Yeah. I mean, it's just what I don't understand is why is it that people just can't think backwards? They can't reverse engineer a potential plot line. They can't think, okay, they want to reach this endpoint here. How would they go about that? And let's kind of work it out backwards. Let's do a Columbo.
A Columbo.
It's just people just aren't able to do that. They're only able to think in one direction, but they're never able to think problem, reaction, solution with anything. I mean, I actually gave a prediction last year, and I said on my Facebook post, they will arson forests in order to legitimize more climate change, laws. I put it on Facebook as a post.
You are vindicated.
And I did a series of predictions, and I'd say I get about 80% right, if not on the.
If you have it, man, send it, and I'll put it out. I'll say, hey, John said this was going to happen, man.
Yeah, I mean, I even said 3 years ago, I said they're going to start drip feeding us more alien encounters, because the overall aim is to do a Project Bluebeam where that's the Hail Mary, isn't it? If all else fails, they're going to do some kind of Independence Day.
And hey, we could have an interesting discussion on this one for sure, because there's definitely that potential. There's a few ways to look at this though, but yes, you're right. You're right in your thinking. And first of all, what you're saying about how people can't put these things together, people have lost the ability to have pattern recognition and logical thinking and critical thinking. And it's actually because the school systems aren't teaching it. They're teaching Marxist ideology, which eliminates and Sartre and all these crazy philosophers that are eliminating a reality. Basically, there is no such thing as reality. 2 + 2 = 5, just like in Orwell's 1984, right? They're literally saying this in college. Oh, 2 + 2 can equal 5 now. And boys can be girls and girls can be boys. So this is the confusion state that they do in psychological operations. Or it's the similar effect. Just forget about how big that sounds. A person listening right now has probably had a relationship with somebody, whether it's a friend or a coworker or a spouse, that turned out to be quite manipulative and maybe even borderline sociopathic, to the point where they are really good at abusing you and then playing the victim, And that's the kind of relationship we're in with the mentality that runs at the top of all this. And so they can't see that because I think the social media is positive for people like us who are going to use it. But for others, you look at what scrolls their feed. It's just nonsense all day, and everything's in quick. Like, look, you're scrolling information in like nanoseconds, and the brain can't even process it. So people have been developing the memory of like a goldfish or something, and they can't remember. Like, I'm like, I'm
Mm.
trying to tell friends of mine with the climate thing. They're all in on the climate thing, but they were totally on my side about the vaccine mandates and the lockdowns and the masks. And I'm like, dude, like that was just yesterday. It's still happening. Like Anthony Fauci still hasn't been arrested for this. And those same people that told you all that shit that you were agreeing with me on are telling you this. Why are you agreeing with this on them? Like, lie to me once, man. Shame on you, but lie to me twice, shame on me.
Mm.
So this is my number one statement. I don't trust known liars and criminals. And I recognize that, or I recommend that people learn how to slow down the thinking a little bit and develop pattern recognition, because it's not that hard. It's easy to see. And like you said, work backwards. When you have the Club of Rome and all these scientific organizations and the United Nations and Bill Gates and the whole clan for decades talking about how we need to bring in that, basically that lockstep manual from Rockefeller, lock down cities, reduce populations, bring in more draconian rule, more surveillance, condense cities, get people off rural lands, all the end private property ownership, have children raised by the state. This kind of stuff that we're seeing was spoken about by Bertrand Russell, for crying out loud, 100 years ago. And then on and on we go here now with the people that are literally saying it to your face and
That's the
doing it.
thing.
And you go, they're doing what they're saying. And then I like how you're saying it. Well, if I was sitting at the table and I knew what the goals were, I would be having discussions with my mates about how do we achieve these goals. So if you want to end the family unit, what do you do? Oh, bring in radical feminism and start feminizing men and causing a gender war between man and woman. Hey, brilliant. That's a good one. How do we get kids out of the home? Well, start indoctrinating them in schools that they don't have to listen to their parents, and that we're going to create this sort of full rebellion in them where they're rebelling against nature, and in so doing rebelling against their parents, and now they can identify as what they want and they can tell the secret to the teacher, and we're going to sexualize them at a young age, and that's going to destroy the Western family unit. And then you go on, oh, how do we get rid of their vibrant economy? Well, we still need their money to fund all of our enterprises. Oh, well, let's create fake wars and get money funneled that way. Let's lock down economies, flush out the small businesses, funnel all the money to the big corporations who didn't have to close during the lockdowns. We'll take the money that way, and on you go. Oh, and then and you just think like, here's the goals, they're written down. How would you do it? And then look at what's happening. And I hope that, reality will start to set in, that that's what they're doing. They're following what they said they were going to do. They're just doing it. And they don't care if you believe in it or not. It's happening.
You know what it is? I think I've got this idea. I don't know if this is a known psychological trait or behavior, but I call it the screaming stewardess syndrome. If you go on a plane and you get a bit of turbulence, if you're starting to worry about it, I always look at the stewardess, because if they panic, then you know you should panic. If they're calm, you stay calm. And that's the same effect that I see when people, you can present information to them, but if the newsreader isn't panicking, then they won't panic. That's kind of the thing. They could say the world, they could even say the world's about to end. Yes, we're all going to die. Anyway, here's Tom with the weather. If
Hmm.
they keep that kind of very relaxed, calm demeanor, people actually won't listen to that information they just said and think
Right.
about it themselves and develop their own sense of, have their own barometer of how they should react in that instance. They will just take the behavior and panic mode off the man on TV, the man in the suit. And if they panic, I'll panic. If they're calm, I'm calm. And that's what I call the screaming stewardess syndrome. And I
Hmm.
see that, and because you could, like you said before, you could show them a palette of information that they will not react to it. Only if the next door neighbor does, the man on TV does, and everyone else does, then they will. That's the kind of the frightening thing, isn't it? About, I guess we could talk a little bit about that's to do with crowd consciousness a little bit, crowd
Right.
psychology. But for me, that's why people just aren't able to, pick up on these things.
Right. And I think the reason people dip into the crowd consciousness versus the independent critical thinking mind, because we have the capacity for both, right? And I'm
Yeah.
not even saying, we're extremist on either way. It's just that this is an inherent weakness that can be exploited by liars and deceivers, right? And propagandists. So I think, but the thing is that what's really blocking people from pursuing the truth of their reality and the truth of what's happening in this world is that they're evading the reality of what's happening within themselves in so many different ways, that they're already internally blocked by fear, by not just fear in the moment. like deep-seated anxiety that is there, that, and it's an anxiety towards the reality itself, because the reality is traumatic. So what's happening is our sales pitch on our side of the fence of truth and wanting to pursue the truth is we are trying to sell people reality.
Mm.
Remember that. That's why that our lineup was always much less for so long. Okay. Because reality, oh, who wants reality? I want to escape reality. Right. Whereas that's Hollywood and these big wigs and all these politicians and the big dazzling flashing lights and all the celebrities and the new like influencers and all that is to dazzle you to evade reality.
Mm.
Right. And by evading reality, reality starts to burn after a while, right? So they're just trying to distract you. It's the old stage hypnotist trick, is to keep you in a state of denial of what's actually happening in front of you. And think of hypnotism, such a good example. They're professionals at redirecting your
Yeah.
focal mind. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And then getting you to also misrepresent reality. You think you're eating an apple, but it's an onion, you know,
Mm.
like all that stuff that they make you do.
Mm.
So that's where they're at. But it wouldn't work if people weren't stuck in fear. Fear is the mind killer. We've been saying this a lot on Unslaved. I put this as that quote from Frank Herbert, Dune, about fear is the mind killer, one of the best quotes of all time. I had that as the main quote in my chapter 9 of Cult of the Medics, the docuseries that people can go check out and watch for free if they want. I put out chapter 9 a couple months ago. And I seeded this message through it, that as we were going through some pretty frightening information, I was having that quote walk along with you to remember fear is the mind killer. It's what shuts you down. You know, danger can be real, and be okay with the fact that there's danger in the world. Okay. Because you can't stop it. Don't knock yourself out trying to end danger. That's what these radical leftists are trying to do. They perceive dangers everywhere at a hyper paranoid state. And they're trying to address all the issues. But in addressing all those issues and being all those busybodies that are morally superior, which they're not, because it's just fake, it's virtue signaling, they are destroying things in the wake. And so what we're seeing, the real split is, you're talking about at the beginning, of those that are going towards the truth and freedom and a beautiful world, and those that are just stuck in cognitive dissonance, is it's the difference between fear and love, but it's also the difference between authentic and inauthentic. Is that the inauthentic, the not real, the fake representation of yourself is very appealing to people who don't want to face reality as it is, or reality within themselves. They develop a lot of self-hate in that process. And so then they need to be in the group. They need it. See, I go to the group when I want to go to the group, right? I go to the group because I'm a social person. I created a dojo. I like social, I love people, but I need a break too. I'm very independent. So, but I don't need it, right? That's the difference. Is there's people, they are addicted to it. It's their religion. And so the split is authentic and inauthentic. So the more authentic you are, the more real you are with yourself, meaning what is real? What is authentic? It's truth. That's enough. They're just words for truth. Genuine article. It's the truth. It's the real thing. And deep down, your soul, your psyche, the best parts of you want the truth. You want goodness. You want those things. But that's why people believe they are good, right? Is because it's an inherent thing that we want to be good and we believe it. But the people that are evading reality are also evading that voice within themselves that is the inner reality, right? The God within, the voice within. And in doing so, they layer it with all these fake costumes, and then they become fake, and then they trust fake people. The liars and criminals that are lying and deceiving and propaganding, that we're like, so like, oh my God, how could you even listen to CBC News? How could you even listen to these late night comedian shills? And people are like, I love it.
Yeah.
Why do they love it? Because that's my question, John. It wasn't, okay, no, fair enough. You fell for a few fibs, no big deal. We all do. These people love it. And you're like, wow. And that's when I went, all right, we're dealing with a psychological dynamic here. And the people that have run decades of experiments on the human mind, these CIA projects, etc., they know this. They know how this works, and they know how to create narratives that are attractive. They know you don't want the truth deep, like you do, but you don't. Most people, anyways. And so they know how to give you the comfortable lies in the stead. So this is Why they're failing, though, here's the final bit. They're failing in this mission now more than ever because of the fact that more people came right up against reality. So it was so real for them. People are dying around them. Their bank accounts are less money in it because all their money's inflated. It's worthless. Everything's costing more. It's chaotic. Reality's hitting them in the face to go, no, no, I'm here. You need to address me. Right. And that's also happening within themselves. There's a calling. That reality within themselves is also calling them to address things. And there's people that are going, I'm going to go and be honest with myself and work on this and face reality. And then there's people who are like, get me the hell away from this. I can't handle it. And I think that's the real split. But that's failing because these guys went too hard, too fast. They flipped too many knobs on at once,
Yeah.
turned the heat up a little too high. And now they're just waking more people up. And part of me wonders if some of this isn't happening on purpose by possibly people from within these systems that have lived and seen the corruption and the evil behind closed doors in the military and the government and Hollywood, etc., and aren't actively working to, and even within secret societies and some of these elite cults that are waking up and working from within to take these people down and help leak this information out. And it makes me wonder if there isn't a bigger war happening on behind the scenes. But either way, we all got to find our way to wake up somehow.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think that? Do you think there's actually white hats working sort of within these institutions that are trying to get their own grip of it within that, or do you think that, or do you take a little bit more of a black pill view of that we are, or you could say that because my friend has a good view on it. He says there's no white hats out there. We are the white hats. You
Mm-hmm.
know, doing podcasts is the white hats. You know, awakening your friends and your family, that is the white hat operation. You know, because the Q stuff obviously divides a lot of people. That to me is like Project Trust from the Bolshevik era. You know, the Red Revolution, where it's like get everyone to do nothing, placate the masses by telling them that there's white hats that are going to look after them. It's like the kind of the superhero sort of complex where don't worry, Big Daddy's got it. You know, so I think for me, it's a fine balance between abdicating your own sense of personal, responsibility at the same time. Don't have complete despair because there's obviously going to be good people everywhere. They're not all these psychopaths every where there's probably more good people than bad people. So what's your take on that? Do you go where do you sit on that kind of line?
Well, I mean, I'm realistic, and I've heard all the arguments on all sides of it. I don't personally. I'll tell you this.
Mm.
I know there's white hats.
All right.
And I would say we're joining the white hats.
Mm.
We're joining the people. White hats meaning people that are within the establishment, people that are within
Yeah.
these elite circles, people that are within the government, that are within the military, the intelligence world. There are good people in this world, and I agree with you. There are more good than people
Mm.
might think. In our world, we like to, because we've seen so much evil happening, we like to go, oh, then everybody's evil. They're every single one of them, you know. But don't be mistaken. There's a certain, well, here's another reason I know there's white hats. I know at least that there was white hats because I've got bookshelves full of their writings of people from within, whether they were journalists within major media corp organizations, whether they were doctors. I've got tons of books of doctors that left the medical cult and exposed it for what it is. I've got theologians and people that are scholars in biblical and historical studies, archaeologists that come from within, highbrow people, people from within academia, within science, within the highest levels of science, people that are in politics, people that are in the police forces that I know directly, people that are in the military that I know directly. And then we've got these Edward Snowdens out there, and we've got many, many other things that are coming out. And for God's sakes, we are getting information given to us by somebody, and information that we knew and we heard rumors about before, but now we can actually validate for sure. Like Epstein, when did that come out? That only came out
Exactly.
after Trump came in,
Mm.
right? Why was that? You know, you start to think, right? So either way, whatever people's take on it is I personally don't think Q was Operation Trust. I think that is a logical conclusion to make if
Mm.
you've never researched it, if someone's never actually read it and seen what happened. I don't think that whole thing put people in a trance where they weren't doing anything. I think it got more people off their ass than ever before. I just think our mentality of
Mm.
what doing something is running through the forest with a musket like Mel Gibson and just taking out the evil
Mm.
guys. Like, when that's not the kind of age we're in. We're in a time where look at the style of war that they're waging against us. They're not in the street with tanks right now. It's mental, psychological, informational war. This war is happening on your news feed right now. This war is happening as you're scrolling social media and deciding which way you're going to be influenced. So, and then when you have, people coming out as anonymous posters, encouraging critical thinking, research for yourself, don't trust anybody unless you've validated it. Here's some things to look at. I just see that as another part of this grander time that we're in, of sparking the curiosity of humanity to even want to go look into this at all. And I'm saying this too, John, because I've been in this movement for 20 years now, and I've seen everything come and go, and I've faced all the different ridicule, and I've seen moments where the truth movement, for example, was gaining momentum and getting information out and trying to change the narrative. But I've never seen it like the environment we're in right now over these past 3 or 4 years, or even let's say 7 years, where this many people are now having casual conversations around the barbecue about shit that we used to speak about in whispers at the pub years ago.
Yeah.
And that can only happen because there was people who weren't sitting on their ass, but were actively involved in trying to, hey, let's analyze the hell out of every nanosecond of every political speech and see if we can't decode symbolism and look for weird anomalies. And let's really go through every news report, and let's compare notes with other people, and let's create a database of evidence about what we're learning about these Epsteins and what we're learning about this royal family and all these other things. And then stuff that I know what's going on in my neck of the woods. And people have been building like a massive encyclopedia all over the world, actively engaged in researching every part of this. That's why these guys are shaking in their boots. That's why. So yeah, you're right. I see both. You are right. We are the white hats. I agree with you, but I do also have to give credit where it's due, that there have been people from within this establishment architecture that have been for decades coming out, and now they're coming out from everywhere. They're getting more and more emboldened. So my message has always been more to encourage that, to encourage any group that's trying to resist this tyranny, expose it, research it, and see what's going on, and to unite the clans and say, what if we unite the clans? Let's get the black pillars in there. You guys can have the front line. We'll get all the other guys in. We'll get the Christians, we'll get the Jews, the Muslims, the New Age people, everybody, the people that didn't believe in conspiracies, the people that do, the UFO people. Let's get everybody, because in the end, what are we all trying to achieve? We want the truth, damn it. And we want to hold these people accountable, and we want justice to be done. Justice, not vigilante justice, not something that is like cosmic level justice to these evildoers. So that to me is the spirit that I'm trying to encourage. Whether people get into the weeds on every little thing that happens, I'll leave that up to everybody else. But I think we're winning. I think we've got help. Otherwise, I think we would have been way further down the pike this far.
Yeah.
And when I see the reaction from the media, and I see the reaction from these politicians, their feet are being held to the fire. Trudeau can't walk an inch outside of Parliament without having a mob of Canadians surrounding him, shouting, "Get out of here, commie!" Like, these people can't even walk the streets anymore. And it's because of that level of awareness. And so I just want to keep fanning those flames to keep it going. And it's a horrible way to talk about it with these fires going on, but you know what I'm saying? Let's put those fires out, catch the arsonists, and fan the metaphorical flames of freedom and truth, because that's what we need to free ourselves from this.
I love that, man. I love that. Yeah, I knew we'd get into like a good old philosophical, deep, kind of chat and really get to the bones of it all. So yeah, thanks, man. Really appreciate it. And could you? We managed to go a whole hour there without mentioning the LGBTQ Pride Month as well, which is it's quite a deft touch as well.
Leave the kids alone. There's my statement.
Well, exactly. I mean, some of that stuff deserves a whole show in itself, doesn't it? I actually just interviewed a guy today who transitioned and detransitioned. So
that must be interesting.
And he's had everything cut off. So he's now a man with a vagina that's having to date women and have that. Yeah, it's just full on. So that's a whole Pandora's box in itself, that one. David, can you mention your website again and
sure,
everything else?
Yeah, no, and this has been fun, man. I always love talking to you. If you want to catch up on my work, guys, it's dwtruthwarrior.com. That's sort of the central hub. You'll see where all the different projects are that I'm a part of. If you want to check out the Unslaved podcast with Michael Tessarian, that's a premium subscription encyclopedia slash museum of ancient knowledge like you've never heard before, and philosophical discussions and controversial information. It's as deep down the rabbit hole as you can go, and that's at unslaved.com. And then if you want to check out my free online ongoing documentary series that I'm doing, trying to expose the occult history of the medical industrial complex, to explain what's going on with all of these crazy medical technocracies going on, you can go to cultofthemedics.com and you can watch the first 9 chapters right now for free. So thanks for letting
Wow.
me shout that out.
David, I didn't know about that. That sounds badass. I'm gonna have to check that out. Fair play. You've been a busy boy then. That's been going on this year, is it?
Oh yeah, well, it's been going on since the beginning. I started it in 2020,
Right, right.
and what I did is I'm telling this story of all this research I have on the history of pharma and all this medical cults and the history of all that, but on the canvas of the pandemic. So you're going to get a bit of both in there. I've just hit 9, and I've got 3 more chapters left. I'm trying to make it a shiny 12. And then I'm hoping to turn it into a book. And that way I just get all the research out, and then hopefully people can help me continue to research this subject, because there's no way I could possibly get my arms around all the information. It's just so huge. So yeah, it's a pretty exciting project. Keeping me
Good
busy
man,
for
good
sure.
man.